We're on a mission from God.
And now for something completely different.
Let's get ready to rumble! Yeah, baby, yeah!
This is Pastor Jolly John Lekumsky. I am the wandering Aramean. I'm coming to you from Northfield, Minnesota this particular morning. And I have with me
Pastor Matt Youngblood Clark, and I am staying put right here in beautiful South St. Louis.
And Matt, you know, you've got me concerned. I'm wondering if some of my curmudgeonliness has rubbed off on you, because I was talking to you about what you wanted to do this morning, and you wanted to do Lamentations chapter 3. And you do know our tagline is we put the fun in the fundamentals, and as far as I know, there's not a lot of fun in Lamentations. So what's going on here, Matt? What's your fascination with one of the most depressing books in the Bible?
I know it's not the book that we flip to first. Lamentations. Can't wait to sign up for the Bible study on that pastor's leading. Good times ahead.
Well, at least it's honest. Lamentations, it doesn't hide anything.
Yeah, I know. And our evangelism efforts, what's the first? What should I read to find out about Christianity? Well, why don't you start with Lamentations? Usually not where we steer people, right, John?
No, that's exactly right. So again, that's my question. What has brought this up to you? Why is this a concern for you? And what's this all about?
Okay, well, can you bear with me just a little
Sure.
bit? And before you ask me what the point is.
What's the point?
I know. This is so I want to kind of look at 2020, the year that we're in. 2020. We're about halfway through, right, John? What kind of 2020 are you having, John Lekumsky?
Well, yes, it would be a year of lamentations between heart attacks and COVID-19 and all of that.
Oh, I know, and I think most people, how's your 2020 going? They feel like saying, "Don't ask," because it's been rough on a lot of people, and you and your family in particular.
Well, but see, I think at least we retired at the right time, because the Social Security has still been coming. In fact, we got a couple of extra checks from the federal government. But I feel sorry for those people that have had been furloughed or maybe even fired. So yeah, it's a lot of economic difficulties in terms of that, as well as the health difficulties. Yeah,
no doubt about it. Yeah, we our refugee members here are still struggling in particular, and like I've said before, many of them in the hospitality industry with hotels and casinos and whatever work they can find, and just still not back and still not with a paycheck, some of them. So tough times still, for sure. So I think, the times are so tough that you almost have to laugh a little bit about the circumstances. And so I don't know if you've seen this going around the internet, but, this idea that if 2020 were a something, what would it be? Here's what I mean. And here's a couple of them that I came up with. If 2020 were a puzzle, it would be the puzzle with that one missing piece. If 2020 were a shopping cart, it would be the one with the loose, squeaky wheel on the front of the cart. We've all had that experience. If 2020,
is this going to be your new bit?
This is I know. Well,
redneck. It's a redneck or hot pockets or something. Okay,
there you go. You're a redneck if this is your 2020 if. So 2020, if it were, I like this one. Lisa came up with this one, my wife. If 2020 were a tattoo, it would be the one with the typo. If 2020 were a potato, it would be the one sprouting in the back of the pantry and growing into a plant. If 2020 were a Major League Baseball team, John, surely you know that it would be the Chicago Cubs.
There you go.
But then my point in all this, if 2020 were a book of the Bible, what book of the Bible would it be?
It would be the Lamentations.
Lamentations. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. And that's why I wanted to talk about Lamentations today, is because I think that fits so well. So Lamentations, like you said, full of weeping, full of lamenting and mourning. That's what the name of the book means. But I think the other interesting and unique thing about Lamentations is this. There's is Lamentations the only book of the Bible where there's mourning and suffering and complaining?
Oh, no, no. In
No.
fact, I would say almost every book of the Bible at some point has mourning and grumbling and complaining. Job, of course, would be the big one.
Yeah.
But I mean, think about Exodus. That's constantly they're
Yeah.
either being enslaved or complaining about life in the wilderness. Yeah.
You bet. And yeah, Job is the other one that came to my mind right away too. Is Job, his suffering and his tears and everything that takes place. But what makes Job and Lamentations different is Lamentations is the suffering of a community, and
Hmm.
it's the suffering of a whole people of the people of Israel. It's not just the suffering of an individual, and that's why I think if 2020 were a book of the Bible, yeah, it would be Lamentations, because what we're going through now in terms of COVID-19 affecting certainly not just our nation but our world, and then just the racial tensions and civil
Oh yeah,
unrest that's
yeah.
taking place right now.
Like we didn't have enough problems
I
already. Yeah.
know. Can you believe that? And boy, I mean, everything just kind of. I think that tensions are running so high, kind of reaching a tipping point here. But again, that's not just felt by an individual, but boy, it's felt by the whole community. And I think that's why Lamentations might be a good book for us to crack open and take a closer look at as we suffer and as we mourn and as we lament as a community too. As a community, certainly a geographic, political community, the United States, but also the community of the church, the kingdom of the right, we might call it, as we mourn and lament too, as the people of God. So, yeah, let's take a little look at Lamentations today. As much as we might not want to, we might want to just ignore this little 5-chapter book of the Bible and leave it tucked away in the Old Testament. But let's take a look today.
Okay, where do you want to start,
Well,
Matt?
let's just get kind of a flavor for Lamentations, all
Okay.
right? I think the first couple verses, Lamentations chapter 1, verses 1 and 2, you kind of get a feel for the lamenting nature of it, but also the community feel for it too. So, do you mind reading verses 1 and 2, John?
All right, you have to give me a second here while I open it up, my Bible.
Okay.
How lonely sits the city that was full of people. How like a widow has she become, she who is great among the nations. She who was a princess among the provinces has become a slave. She weeps bitterly in the night with tears on her cheeks. Among all her lovers, she has none to comfort her. All her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They have become her enemies.
Yeah. Yeah, don't you want to just keep on reading? Oh, that's rough. That's a rough beginning to a book. So just to set the
So what's the context here, Matt?
good question. Yeah. So this the book of Lamentations is almost certainly written by the prophet Jeremiah.
Okay.
And Jeremiah called the weeping prophet. When we look at the Old Testament, our English Bibles have Jeremiah and Lamentations right next to each other, even in their order. And Lamentations is being written right after Judah is taken over by the Babylonians, and God warns them that this is going to happen. They know it's coming. If they had listened to Jeremiah, they would have known it was coming. But yet, the people and the leaders ignore the warnings that Jeremiah gives as a prophet, and God, in His really divine, fatherly, loving discipline, allows the people to be conquered by Babylon. So the Babylonians take over, people are taken away into exile, and perhaps even worse, the city that's being described here in verses 1 and 2 is destroyed, Jerusalem. Not only that, but also even worse, perhaps the temple, right? The temple is destroyed too. That place of worship, the place where the Lord dwells, that's gone too. So you can
And
see
and
why
that
there's weeping.
well, I was gonna say that was kind of the problem, wasn't it? They thought, well, that's one thing that could never happen. The temple could never be destroyed because that's where God dwells there in the Holy of Holies.
Yeah,
but they
yeah,
were wrong.
they were
And
wrong,
Jeremiah
exactly.
told them they were wrong. Yeah.
That's right, and God is the one who allows it to happen, God himself, and
Yes.
he uses
Yeah.
Babylon as his instrument, for that to take place. So, we've got that lamenting, those first couple of verses, it's like, um, Jerusalem's personified, Jerusalem's made into a person. And what does she look like? She looks like this widow who is alone and weeping in those verses. And then we move. There's a couple other verses, just one other verse maybe to read, just to get a flavor for this. If you don't mind reading verse 10 as well,
All right. In the old days, I would have had to turn pages, but here I just have to scroll my mouse.
scrolling down. I know you're so high tech,
the,
John.
the enemy has stretched out his hands over all her precious things, for she has seen the nations enter her sanctuary, those whom you forbade to enter your congregation. Well, now that's a strange verse, Matt.
It is. So, I mean, those first couple of verses are about the city lamenting over
Yeah.
that, but now this one's more about lamenting over the temple itself.
Yeah.
The nations have entered her sanctuary. Those you forbade. So this idea that even the temple, the sanctuary, the temple itself, even that has been desecrated, destroyed, and that is reason to weep too. So
Well,
you
and
did go
well,
ahead.
I'm thinking it brings to mind that even in the days of Jesus, they had the wall surrounding the temple with the signs that and no Gentile should enter therein. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know, and who's entered in? Well, the Babylonians, the Gentiles have, and it's gone. Yeah. Lamenting, weeping of the Israelites, but the point is, we weep and lament today too. As a community, we weep and lament as a church when we see what's happening around us. Our weeping, our lamenting, I think, have different circumstances, right? We're not weeping that over Jerusalem necessarily, over a temple being destroyed. We're weeping over other things. But yet, I think our weeping, our lamenting, has the same source, the same source. Um, so let me explain what I mean by that.
Well, yeah. What do you mean by that? Because the Babylonians, they're not persecuting me.
I know. I'm glad
They're
to hear
all
that,
dead, Matt. That's one. I worry about a lot of things, but I don't ever get up and say, "Oh my God, what are the Babylonians going to do today?"
John. Yeah, you're pretty Babylonian free up in Minnesota,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess. The Vikings might show up. The Babylonians, no. Uh,
No, I don't worry about the Vikings either, Matt. I don't know what you think is going on up here, but no, they're pretty much dead too.
must have a warped view of Minnesota.
Yeah, I guess so.
But okay, here's my illustration. So there's this statue in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania's Academy of Fine Arts.
Okay.
And the inscription of the statue at the base, it says Jerusalem and her desolation. That's the name of the statue,
Ah,
of Jerusalem and her desolation. So what the artist has done is try, just like the book of Lamentations has tried to put into words what Jerusalem would be like, right? And we just read that. She's pictured as a widow weeping in Lamentations. Well, the artist has kind of tried to do the same thing. What would Jerusalem look like if she were a statue? Okay. And
okay.
and what he does is he carves this depiction of a woman sitting on a throne, and she's just numb with grief. I mean, she's just glassy eyed, staring out,
Because
and
she was a
she,
princess, so she would
yeah.
have been on a throne. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That she, this Queen City, God's the place where God dwells. Boy, she's been desolated, taken over, and she's just numb with grief and grieves. The city's in ruins. So I think that's interesting that the artist chooses to depict her in much the same way that the Book of Lamentations does. But then my point is,
Do you think there's a lawsuit there, Matt? Because I'm thinking that's he's probably just stolen that from
plagiarize.
Lamentation. Yeah, Jeremiah. I think he's got a case.
He
So
just might. He just
yeah.
um, at the base of the statue, though, is this little detail that's almost overlooked, and what's at the base, and I think this is pretty clever, is carved a snake, and the snake is
Ah,
slithering over the feet, over the city of Jerusalem, this woman's feet.
cool.
So I,
Yeah.
I think, again, the artist point I think is a good one. That really the source of all this lamenting and weeping for Jerusalem is Satan and sin. That snake, that depiction of Satan, the devil, of sin. And that really is the root cause of it. Again, the Lord is the one allowing this to happen. And it's a result of the unfaithfulness of the people in various and many ways. And for us too, when we lament, when we weep, and whether it's over COVID or whether it's over, civil unrest, racism, I mean, again, at the root of all those things is just the sinful fallen world in which we live, and even Satan. So again, weeping over different things, maybe us and the people of Jerusalem, but yet our weeping is the same source, are the sinful fallen world, our own sin, and certainly Satan himself.
No, 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 I'm not going to argue with you on that,
Okay.
Matt. Because certainly, yeah, the devil was the source of our trouble from the very beginning. As God said that you shall not eat of the fruit, and certainly sin is at the root of all this, especially like you said, racism. Because that's just sinful. That's all there is. God says he wants the whole world to be saved. God says he wants all men to be saved. So any kind of distinction made on the basis of race is just sinful. But see, you also made an interesting point, though, that this evil, this wickedness is something that the Lord has allowed. So, I mean, he's kind of got a hand in it as well. But I didn't mean to get you off track. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think it's good, and I think building off that idea of just the Satan himself and that sinfulness. There was an article that was written recently by an LCMS pastor, Keith Haney. And he's in Iowa. He's kind of in between you and I
Yeah.
guess, sandwich in between us. He's an African American pastor, and he writes, about the unrest right now. And he has this quote. He says, "As we watch America burn with hatred and violence, we could forget that this is a spiritual battlefield." And then I really like his quote here. He says, "It's not us versus them; it's us versus him." In
Ah,
other words, us
good.
versus Satan,
Yeah.
Um, and then he goes on, Satan is sitting back smiling as division and anger and resentment and fear and violence run rampant. Again, it's not us versus them. No, it's us versus him. And I thought that was just a good point too. And,
That is.
it's certainly the case, in America right now, but not just in this one case, but in so many things that we don't want to lose sight of the fact that, the enemy isn't each other. No, like you pointed out, John, our neighbor is one for whom Jesus died, no matter who they are. No, the enemy is not each other. The enemy is Satan ultimately. And I think that's really, insightful of him to bring that to light.
So is there other verses then that we
Yeah,
need
yeah.
to?
I don't want to leave us there because
Yeah.
Lamentations is this book of weeping, 5 chapters long, but in the middle of it is this glimmer of hope. And that's so often the case in Hebrew writing and Hebrew poetry in particular, is in the middle is kind of the main point. And that's certainly true in the book of Lamentations. The main
You
thing
know,
is in the middle.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I remember a young vicar by the name of Matt Clark who told me often the meat is in the middle, he
Yeah.
said.
Yeah, that sounds pretty. Wow. That guy was right on, John.
Profound.
Profound.
So where is the hope? Because I've been looking through the book. You had told me we wanted to do Lamentations 3, but I don't know. He drove into my kidneys the arrows of his quiver. I've become the laughing stock of all peoples. I'm not seeing a lot of happy stuff there either,
You
man.
gotta look hard. You gotta look hard,
Okay.
admittedly. But there's a glimmer,
He's filled me with
of
bitterness.
hope.
Okay, so where's this? My teeth grind on gravel. He covers me with ashes. Where's it at, Matt?
All right. So look to the middle of chapter 3, verses 22 and 23.
Oh, I just
So
didn't go far enough.
so check
Okay.
that out. So can you read that for us?
Oh,
Verses 22 and 23.
there
You
it
might
is.
recognize it.
Yeah, and it's right in the middle of all this stuff about, my endurance has perished. I've forgotten what happiness is. And then the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so beautiful. And this idea that God's mercies are new every morning. It talks about his steadfast love, his unending mercy, his great faithfulness. And I'm thinking, especially that phrase, new every morning. it seems like, to me at least, lately in 2020, every morning we wake up to a new news headline, and it's always bad. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
it's almost comical because I mean, it's like, how much worse can this get? There's things happening that would normally make the headlines that just haven't. Tropical storms and murder hornets and did you hear about the asteroid that's dangerously close to Earth now and all
No.
this stuff?
Oh man, as if
Um,
I didn't have enough to worry
I
about.
know, I know. So every morning there's something new going on, but the point is, Lamentations reminds us beautifully that every morning God's mercies are also new. So whatever we're greeted with, in the newspaper or on the headlines, the evening news, whatever it is, whatever we're greeted with, we know that every day God's mercies are new. Every day His faithfulness is great. Every day His steadfast love is still there for us. And I think
And
that's something to cling
go,
to, during these times. Yeah, John.
well, see, that's the thing. You say something to cling to, because it's amazing that this powerful, in fact, this great is your faithfulness, right? That
Yeah.
wonderful hymn that everybody loves.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
that it's in the middle of a context where he says, "So my endurance has perished, so has my hope from the Lord." So isn't that incredible? So he's feeling despair, and yet it doesn't change the fact that God is faithful and His mercies are new every morning. So
Exactly.
it's just,
Yep.
man, when you see the context, that makes that passage even more powerful.
I think so too. Our circumstances, and boy, the circumstances in Jerusalem and Judah following the Babylonians were really bad. Yet nothing changes God's promise of His new mercies and His great faithfulness. Yeah. The uh, One other example, real quick, I came across this quote from Corey Ten Boom. So
Oh yes,
the people, you're probably familiar with her story at least
yeah.
a little bit. She was a Dutch Christian, and she lived during World War II, and her family would hide Jews in their homes, so who were in fear of being arrested by the Nazis. So I mean, she knew something about racism, certainly at the hands of the Nazis. Well, eventually, she and her family were turned in, and she herself was taken to a concentration camp. Um, but she has this quote there that she tries to express what she learned there in that concentration camp, and here it is. I think this is nice. It's about finding comfort, and she says this: "If you look to the world, you'll be distressed. If you look within, you'll be depressed. But if you look at the Lord, you'll be at rest."
Ah, that
And
is a beautiful
I
quote.
just love that because, during this time of 2020 and the multiple things happening, uh, if we're looking to the world for comfort, no, you're just going to be more distressed. That's not where comfort's found. That's not where new mercies are found. If we look in our own sinful selves, no, we'll just be depressed. Not much there. Not a whole lot of hope dwelling just within us, in and of ourselves. But if we look to the Lord, if we look to this promise that we have beautifully here in the center of the book of Lamentations, no, we'll be at rest if we dwell on His new mercies, His steadfast love, His great faithfulness. So just a reminder for our listeners, but a reminder for me too, that that's where our focus is during this time. Those unchanging promises.
And Matt, that's one thing that a heart attack teaches you,
No,
because I wake up every morning and I think, "Oh, I'm alive."
there you go. Talk about new
so, so
mercies every morning.
yes,
Yeah,
yes. So for all the other problems that are going on, I'm still here. And of course, on one hand, you're thinking, "Oh, well, if I hadn't lived, I'd be in heaven right now, and I wouldn't have to worry about wearing a mask or about the latest outbreak in terms of violence." And yet, on the other hand, no, I'm glad. I'm glad I'm here, and I'm glad the mercies are new every morning. And what a beautiful reminder that the steadfast of the love of the Lord never ceases. Yeah.
exactly. So, if 2020, if it was a song, what song would it be? Well, I'd suggest it would be the hymn "Great Is Thy Faithfulness."
Ah,
um,
nicely done.
Morning by morning, new mercies I see. And then I love the one line in the last verse: "Strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. Blessings all mine with 10,000 beside." Yeah, strength for today and hope for tomorrow. That's what God's faithfulness gives us.
This has been Wrestling
Wrestling with
with
the
the
Basics.
Basics.